So some might see some irony in the fact that you're anti-war, an anti-interventionist, and yet you believe there should be no call for a ceasefire in the Israel-Hamas situation, ending the ongoing military campaign by Israel in Gaza. And that's being described by genocide in some quarters. So how can you justify that?
Well, it's not genocide. It's a war. And in fact, Israel does more to prevent civilian casualties than any country in human history. And if you look what they've done in Gaza, which is to warn people before they bomb, nobody else does that. They've sent out 1.2 million pamphlets. They made 20,000 direct human-to-human telephone calls to people before they bomb apartment building. They've made 1.2 million robocalls to everybody who's about to get bombed. They send roof knocker bombs, which they invented. But they're fighting against an implacable foe, which is committed to a genocide of Israel that does not want to negotiate, that has violated every ceasefire the 5 ceasefires before, they violated every one of them. They have said we will not be content with any result other than a genocide of the Jews and the annihilation of Israel. How can you negotiate with that group? I believe wars are wrong. And since in American history, the last war that we fought that was justified was World War II. World War I was not. We should never have gotten into it. And none of the wars since World War II. But Israel's not asking us for troops. They're asking us for support. And by the way, the support that we've given Israel is mainly to construct the Iron Dome, which is a mechanism for avoiding the invasion of Gaza. Because Hamas has shot 30,000 rockets at Israel since 2006, at civilian populations in Israel. Even it's part of the propaganda war that Gaza has the densest population in the world. It doesn't. Tel Aviv has twice the population density as Gaza, and Gaza's been firing missiles at civilian populations for 30 years. What other country in the world would we ask to put up with that? And the Israelis do. Why? How do they do it? They built an Iron Dome.
But it allows them. It's still a unique situation where you have the people in Gaza who don't have freedom of movement.
Oh, but why are you blaming the Israelis for that? It's Hamas that has given them no freedom of movement. Hamas has turned Gaza into an open air prison, not Israel. Israel didn't do that.
The outcome still that what we're seeing right now is tens.
Well, of course, the outcome in World War II when we invaded Germany and killed 2 million civilians in order to get Hitler. Churchill didn't want to do that. Churchill and Roosevelt argued at Casablanca, and Roosevelt said we need unconditional surrender because as long as the Nazis were there, it's going to be a war-making machine and they'll grow up again. And Churchill said, yeah, but if we make unconditional surrender, they're going to fight to the death and there's going to be a lot of civilians. Roosevelt said, over the long run, it's a better outcome for everybody. And indeed, that's what happened. We did the same thing in Japan, the same thing in Germany. We denazified them. Israel needs to de-radicalize Gaza so that the money that we've poured into Gaza's now...
It's going to be the opposite effect. If you've got generations now seeing what's been happening, the Palestinians...
It's already... that's not Israel's fault. That is the ideology that Gaza teaches children from when they're born, when they're toddlers. But they're taught that the highest aspiration of a Palestinian is to slit the throat of a Jew. They're taught that from when they're little babies. So, of course, what we saw on October 7th, the level of brutality, an entire group of people that had the morality of serial killers, where they're cooking babies in ovens. You cannot get worse than that. That only comes from indoctrinating children from when they're little babies.
I don't think anyone's questioning that. What I'm getting at, though, is that essentially the Palestinians have to go through border checkpoints. They have a different situation. So
it's their own country. And listen, they had an open border in Gaza until Hamas took over. Hamas and suicide bombers across the border. What would you think would happen, Mr. Khan, if Mexico sent 30,000, elected a government that said, we're going to reclaim Texas. And they sent 30,000 rockets onto San Antonio. And they sent suicide bombers across to kill Americans. Do you think we'd put up a fence?
I'm not defending Hamas, sir. That's not the question. I'm
but
curious about your perspective.
You're blaming Israel.
I'm not blaming anyone. I'm just questioning what your perspective is on this. Because, for example, you said, Palestinians are the most pampered people in the world. I was just trying to get your perspective.
All right, let me answer that.
Please.
I'm saying that not because Palestinians have a good life. I'm pro-Palestinian. I'm as pro-Palestinian as you can get. I'm anti-Hamas. Hamas has robbed the Palestinian people. The international aid community, the United States, after World War II, created the Marshall Plan. And we rebuilt 17 nations in Europe that were destroyed by World War II. We gave an average payment of $48 per capita in 1948 dollars. It's about $621 per capita today. We have already funneled to the 5 million Palestinians an average of $8,600 per capita, more than 13 times what we did to rebuild all of Europe. What's happened to that money? The Palestinians are worse off than they started because that money is being stolen by Hamas, which is a organized crime cartel and a corporate kleptocracy. Ismail Haniyeh, who's the head of Hamas, has a net worth of $5 billion. The top 3 leaders of Hamas have a net worth of $11 billion collectively. Mahmoud Abbas has $1 billion. His son have $750 million each. Yasser Arafat on $1 billion. So they're stealing the money. They're using that money, that international aid money, for 2 reasons. One, to build weapons, 300 miles, entire underground city, 300 miles of tunnels, to buy Kalashnikovs, to buy bombs, to buy drones, to kill Jews with. That's it. Hamas is the enemy of the people of Palestine, and not Israel.
If you're at the helm in the White House right now, how would you be handling the Israeli-Palestinian situation? What would you do?
I would be on the phone. I would have a different relationship with the world leaders like Xi, like Putin, like Sisi in Egypt. I think that there is a chance for peace, short of the complete annihilation of Hamas, if all the other world leaders and the world community came together to support Israel and said, we're going to help you solve this problem. But that's not what happened. Unfortunately, they left Israel on its own. And at that point, Israel doesn't have any options except to destroy Hamas. So, and I'm not a fan of Prime Minister Netanyahu. And most Israelis aren't either. Most Israelis no longer support him, but they do support this policy because there is no future for Israel if they don't destroy Hamas.